energetic, passionate, and savvy. Gouche Live, brought to you by the good people at the Hockey News and Sports Illustrated. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Gouche.
Of course, they're not talking about me. They're talking about Mike Futa and James Richmond, JR, as we know him. They're coming up in a few minutes. Just want to say hello. Obviously, a great weekend of hockey, great weekend for sports. Obviously, some sad stories, but some really good stories. Obviously, the passing of Walter Gretzky is still there and in front of us. And then, of course, Mark Pavlich. I know there's going to be a lot of play out here. It's International Women's Day. What a phenomenal situation around the world. Tomorrow, I have Jacqueline Hawkins. We're going to be talking about International Women's Day, but also she's part of a great organization that she's developed, and we'll talk about her and the women's game. It's just be announced. The NWHL will complete its playoffs that obviously were stopped because of COVID on March the 26th and 27th. So we're really excited about that. I'm still reeling over my Winnipeg Jets. I'm in the dressing room right here. We're going to have some dressing room talk with two of the greatest, I'll tell you what, it's a PG rated show, so we're going to keep it there. But I'll tell you what, some of the stories, James, Rich, and myself, and Darcy Roy, that's a book. But JR and Foots, it's a movie. And we'll talk a little bit about, how we had to pack. And I'm not sure it was just our clothes. Listen, we'll get a chance with Mike Futa just to talk a little bit about the NHL, what's going on. Obviously, he's royalty now. Speaking of royalty, what is going on over in UK? I feel horrible for the Queen. I hope some of these accusations are not about her and about, wow, that in itself, drama at Coronation Street. I think it'll be another opportunity for us to get some of them on. But we'll talk to JR about his career right now. Obviously, Mississauga Steelhead general manager and also the coach. What is all playing out? But most importantly, right now, we got Mike Futa. He is a TV personality. He knows. Look at him. Boots, what's going on?
I tell you, Gouche, I didn't have time to do makeup. They do makeup at Sportsnet. I mean, this is. I'm gonna have to just blend in here. Okay. I love that.
No, you look good.
I love that dressing room.
Well, you know what? I think I need to talk to you because you're not only an expert, you're a Sportsnet guest analyst. First, you're going to tell us about that. Then you're my shrink. You got to help me, kid. 7-1 loss to Montreal. So I said, that's it. I'm flying to Winnipeg. I'm going to give the pregame speech for tomorrow against the Leafs. All right, so we'll go through that in a sec. Tell us about what's going on with Mike Futa right now, TV personnel.
Well, I would prefer to be in my old position with another organization. So it was very difficult. My option year I've been 13 years with the Kings, and we've won a couple Stanley Cups, and it's the only NHL team I've ever been a part of. And my contract option wasn't picked up in COVID, and I came back, and with the place is empty. I mean, I interviewed for the Pittsburgh Penguins GM job about 3 weeks ago, and I ended up with Ron Hextall. So I've done some Zoom interviews. It's just pretty difficult with getting across the border to interview in person is a difficult thing. And as well, owners are not interested right now with no revenues coming in and adding any kind of significant salary, which makes perfect sense. So have to be patient. I was very fortunate. I've been being kind of bothered in a fun way about doing the TV side of things because you're used to kind of being interviewed and having fun with that. And being back in Toronto, Elliot Friedman reached out to me about coming on as a guest last year for the draft, and the rehearsal didn't go well, but the show went very well. So they invited me back for free agency. And then when things have kind of I haven't been busy. I've been watching a ton of hockey, and they asked if I wanted to come back on a regular basis. And it's good because I get to watch hockey with a purpose, and you've got to pay attention because you're going to have to present opinions. I've done my best to avoid. I asked them to just kind of let me tell stories as opposed to have to be put in a situation where you're critical of somebody, because that's not good for getting back in the industry. But at times it's difficult not to be honest when you're seeing some things unfold the way they are, and you're just shaking your head in disbelief at some of the people that have opportunities, and hopefully they will be held accountable when the season ends and fans are back in the building.
All right, so here's my question. why did you not arm wrestle Brian Burke to say, okay, up and up, we'll just wrestle for the GM? I honestly thought when I heard it that I thought you were going to get it, buddy.
Well, it was an interesting topic because I was working with Berkey on Sportsnet, and he's one of my top references, and he said he was calling them on my behalf, and by the time the conversation was over, he was the president. Next to was the general manager, so I might have to reshuffle my reference list. But no, Berkey's a good man. I mean, he'd always said, even in his book, that he didn't want to. He was done with the hockey offside. He really loved his job at Sportsnet, and he was obviously very entertaining in that role. But I guess, there's certain organizations that was a great opportunity. He has a history with the ownership group there. I think, I still haven't got the story yet. I know that they had already started down the path of hiring Ron when they spoke to Berkey. So it's an interesting pair. Interesting dynamics, almost polar opposites personality wise, but they are two tough hombres. I said, everybody says Pittsburgh's a soft team. I said, well, they certainly don't have a soft management team. Between Berkey and Hex, the two toughest guys in the organization are wearing suits.
The one word that I know that's going to, well, he won't do his tie-up, is going to be truculence. I hear that word. It just reverberates back and forth in my head. Listen, I'm not, certainly please don't take this. I'm trying to get JR. He's running a little bit late, so Mikey, just hang in there. He's going to come on. But so if you don't mind us talking about the NHL right now, I'd like to get your perspective on the Canadian division. Like there's people down in the States, and you've been down there. You ran a lot with the LA Kings. Tell us, in your opinion, right now, is the North Division much weaker than down south? Because everybody's saying, wait till the Leafs or the Jets or the Habs or Oilers get a hold of Vegas, Colorado, St. Louis.
I do believe it's not the strongest of the divisions at all. But that being said, I believe the product that the Leafs have put forth is going to be competitive with anybody. I don't feel the same way at this point about the other teams, sort of about your Jets. I think they're going to challenge teams. The only thing I think the Leafs, they filled some voids that have always been there, and I give Kyle credit because I always felt they were a team that was built for the regular season, and then once it kind of got mean and nasty in the playoffs, that they didn't have the horses to do it, and they're a tough team to play against. I think the biggest problem is going to be maintaining. Like, it's almost like they hit their A game in the middle of the season, and then they go in and just thrash Edmonton, and I think they went in and you couldn't help but think they were going to take Vancouver a little bit lightly. And Thatcher Demko stood on his head. So of course the city of Toronto's at, if anytime they lose, it's ready. They're going to shut down the parade again because they've had their.
Well, it was canceled. I just got a notice in my mailbox. They were coming right by my door.
Well,
if
they spank if they spank the Jets Tuesday night, they'll start it up again. The floats will start.
No. There'll be threats. There'll be threats. Now, listen, I wanted to ask you, because you played at a high level, we're going to talk a little bit about your playing career and your friendship. The reason why I got you two on is you guys got stories that are just, they're legendary. And we'll talk about you being in Denmark and obviously playing in Germany. We just got a great shout out for you, Gabby Tepper, all the way from Bremerhaven, Germany. And
I just saw it. I didn't know. I just turned it on now and saw that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And Joey Lyons, he's always out there hey, Joey, thanks for coming out, buddy. Thanks for being a part of it. Listen, Paul Rosen's just making sure I understand the games are not in Winnipeg and they're in Toronto. Well, I was at the pre-game skate for tomorrow, and they held it in Winnipeg before they jumped on the charter. So I thought I'd come here and give the boys a little chatter. And so before I got to go there in about an hour to talk to the guys, the group, before they get on their flight. Foods. What would I be telling them? They got completely crushed by the Montreal Canadiens. We know the Canadiens needed something to get their spark going again. Obviously, beating Winnipeg as handily as they did was absolutely incredible. But they only, they lost 7-1. You can't take, as you being involved with the NHL, you can't take the highs too high, the lows too low. You got to try and, hey, bad night. Carey Price was great. Hellerbach didn't look like the Vezina Trophy winner. That can happen. Would you be more concerned with what went on in the Toronto situation where they lost back-to-back to the Vancouver Canucks? It's one game they lost. They're out. Toronto lost 2. They didn't look overly motivated. Where would you be? What would I be saying to my team tonight, the Winnipeg Jets, as they get ready to go up against the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Well, Paul Maurice is an excellent coach too, so I think that his message is going to be, you got to put it aside, but you better learn from it, because you've got a team that kind of got poked a couple times in Vancouver that can light you up every bit as much as the Habs just did. So, I mean, I think there's going to be a little bit more desperation. I mean, the Leafs don't want to fall into a funk where, they're way off, like they're now, it's a 3-4 game losing streak. You start to wonder when you see stuff like that where it's going to end up. But I just think they've got to get back to playing their game and, playing with intensity and really tightening it up defensively, because you can't open up with the Leafs. So that would be my advice. And don't, just put it behind you, but learn your lessons from it, because it was a beating.
Well, be careful. I'm in their dressing room.
You're the one that mentioned 7-1 5 times.
Hey, listen, we're having dressing room talk. Obviously, you've been in the dressing room with the boys talking, and what goes on between like you're having a bad night. You and I, listen, trust me, in Timmendorf, I had some bad nights. The good nights, everybody's just partying. The bad nights, until Mark McKay got started strangling people. What goes on? Let's say in Winnipeg you're down 5-1 in between the periods, or the Leafs where they're having an off night. What goes on in the second intermission? Like what are they yelling? Hey guys, we gotta pick it up. Hey guys, we're playing. What's the language?
Whew, you said it was
without the F-bomb.
I think in certain situations, there's certain coaches like in the National Hockey League that don't even go into the room. Like I was told Pat Quinn, I think it was Gary Roberts, Pat Quinn didn't go in the room once as the Toronto Maple Leaf head coach in between periods and over his entire career. I think other sports, I was told that Justin Williams told me that, who's coaching, who's longtime national, Barry Trotz goes in every period, in between every period.
Love Barry.
Yeah. So it's an interesting dynamic. And again, it's one of those things that, it's up to each different style. Now I know Brian Burke, Daryl Sutter, who's now back in business.
Hello.
There was once that we were doing one of those outdoor games, and there was a contractual thing that the coach had to be mic'd up. So Luc Robitaille called me down. And he goes, "Foots, we got to edit Daryl's stuff." So we started to play it, and he was like, he had this look like a ghost. He'd just seen a ghost. And he's like, by the end of it, we couldn't put anything on.
Beep, beep,
we had nothing.
beep,
so we had
beep,
to
beep, beep.
Contractually. Oh, it was nasty stuff, but contractually. And you know what? That was Daryl's style at the time. But then when the game started, Daryl had heard that we weren't happy with the language, so he cut all the microphones. He cut all the microphones, so we couldn't have a mic on the bench. So we had to, because we were contractually obligated, we had to mic up one of the trainers like a Secret Service man and have him follow Daryl up and down the bench, so we could at least get a comment here and there. So different folks for different strokes. I would imagine Sheldon Keefe. I mean, when you've got guys like Joe Thornton in the dressing room now, I think they're the guys that kind of, I'm sure they're the guys that police the younger players. And I'm sure there's going to be times when a coach comes in where he just say, "No, coach, I got this. I've got it." And that's what solid leadership was. I know Jonathan Toews used to do it. I know in our case, we had so many solid leaderships that, we had guys like Justin Williams and Jarrett Stoll and Matt Green that would just say, "Hey, I've got this." I've got
So how much influence can a coach have in that situation when you got all those leaders and, listening from your coach yelling and screaming at you versus Joe Thornton, who you have tremendous respect for, saying, "Hey guys, we've all been here before." It's not the first time these guys have been beaten up, right? The Toronto Maple Leafs losing like they did, or the Winnipeg Jets, they've all been there, whether it's in junior or, they all know what to do. So they don't need a coach coming in yelling and screaming at you. They really need to just, collectively between the group, "Okay, guys, we're having an off night. Let's see what we can do. Let's go out there, try and win the third period. We may not win the game, but at least we show we're ready for the next day." Hey, Dennis Marouk's popping up. As you can see on the right-hand side, there's comments. I'm going to throw that. You'll get another job, no question.
There's a guy that could just put the puck in the net. What an offer. Yeah. He's a good man. I became good friends with him through our local Dom Day tournament here, our slow pitch tournament. So he's a good man. The whole Marouk family are legends in Rexdale, so that's pretty cool.
class act, Sam
Nice
Trapolino.
to hear Bob Burke. It's weird because that's funny that Burke's style of leading, because Ron Hextall is the general manager. That's the funny thing. It's like if you'd heard Berkey's interview, you'd wonder who the general manager actually was. But that's going to be my understanding is Berkey's going to back off and add something, but it's Ron Hextall's team to build.
Okay, so let me ask you that. I was going to go there. I just wanted to do a shout out. Sorry, bud, you got ahead of me. That's all right. Sam, all the way from Adelaide, Australia, looking and watching this. He knows of you. He got involved with my ice hockey classic and stop concussion, so he's been following us very regularly. And he's a big fan of JR because when we had JR, his stories are just silly. So getting you two mixed up will be great. So I want to go back to Bobby B's comment here. Tell us the difference between the general manager's job and where Berkey is. Like, how does that dynamic work? Like, who's picking the players? Just give us the distinction between the two.
I would assume, and I mean, we never had, like, Dean Lombardi was the president and general manager. It was a little different. Luke became the president of hockey operations when Rob Blake took over, and Luke had a lot of ideas and thoughts. Like, he would offer up a lot of different things, but it really falls on the general manager. It's his job. It just is. I mean, it's his job to get the players. I think in a case like that, when you've got somebody that's one like Berkey, you can bounce ideas off them, thoughts. I think they both have the same concept of having teams that are, I mean, as much as Hex was a bit of a nut bar when he played, he also understands the ability. You have to have skill, but I think they all. I mean, he was a Philadelphia Flyer. Brian Burke is all about truculence. They're not going to like watching Sidney Crosby get slapped around and nobody do anything about it. So I would think before the trade deadline, especially when you start to see the way these, you saw some of those games on the weekend. They look like some throwback.
Yeah,
that was entertaining because you talk about teams playing with passion. It would not surprise me one bit to see the Pittsburgh Penguins acquire somebody that can play but can bring it and then can address that, because you don't want your skill players getting mugged like that. And you could see the frustration on Crosby. And they just, in fairness, they just don't have somebody that can address that in their lineup, and they've got to find it. And it's out. There's going to be some teams that don't make the playoffs that have that element available, with little term left. And I think they're going to have to go. That's the one thing that you're going to have to address.
So on this show, we've been talking over the last couple of weeks when Berkey obviously took over, the thoughts of the future of the Pittsburgh Penguins. And we were thinking about trade him, release him, sign him. And it came out, Val Silva, who's our producer, he's in the green room now taking over the channel. So we'll be doing a little bit better on all the stuff that's going on. The question would be, with Crosby, is there any chance, any inkling they would ever move Sidney Crosby out of Pittsburgh, giving him the opportunity? I know it'd be his choice, no question. They get a boatload, probably an arena, and maybe even a small island off of Fiji for him. Would that be anything that's? I know you may not be able to answer that because you want to get another job.
No. In the interview process, that was addressed, and they asked your thoughts on it. And it's completely up to Sidney Crosby. I mean, you're going to sit down, and I mean, everything. My understanding from the early discussions is that Sidney wants to remain a Penguin and retire a Penguin, which I think is great. But if all of a sudden, like, they really don't have any assets coming, like, it's a win now, and I mean, prior to Berkey getting hired, he didn't think they were good enough. He didn't think they were good enough to win as is, because other teams were just better. I think Malkin and Letang are a little bit different. I think if at the end of the year, the team isn't where it needs to be at, I think they're really going to have to look, with Malkin having another year at 9.5, at looking at maybe, and some of these players, I mean, they have no move clauses as well. So you're talking to them about moving them to build up your asset category. But as far as Sidney Crosby, there's never a thought process. I mean, I thought to myself that maybe, if they go complete rebuild and they're in last place, that he might want to go to Colorado and win a cup with his best friend McKinnon or something like that. But all accounts are he wants to retire a Pittsburgh Penguin, and he's earned that right. He's one of the few players in the world that have dictated the right to decide how they want their career to finish up, and he's far from done. But
yeah, no question.
He wants to remain a Pittsburgh Penguin. He's going to play out his contract and then see where things are at from there.
Yeah, that goal he scored last night just shows this kid's not done. Like, Sid the Kid. Maybe we got to change the kid part. Maybe we call him Sid the teenager now.
Wow, the thing you think about it is, the only thing I would say is he's had a history of, some head injuries, and you can't let guys take advantage of him. And that he's one guy that should not be forced to protect himself. And that's the one thing that I would assume behind their mask is just driving Berkey and Hex nuts. So
yeah, he'll get it. Hey, listen, I want to talk about Malcolm really quickly, and then we'll get on to a couple other topics. Is there any way that, as you say, 9.5, but at the end of the season, let's say things just, they have to improve, and how do they improve? They got to get rid of assets. Would Malcolm, obviously you'd have to ask him, would there be a chance that he goes back to Russia and just says, hey, listen, he's had a tremendous career, and just say, instead of me moving around, would you think that would be any type of possibility?
What I know about hockey players, in particular the Russians, leaving 9.5 schmil on the table will not be an option. He'll get the old yet.
That's a heck of a lot of caviar, let me tell you.
There's no chance. Now, I could see him playing out the last year and then going off and retiring in Russia because he doesn't need any more money, but there's no way he's leaving that money on the table.
No, I agree. All right, listen, Bobby B's asking a question. Would be interesting to hear Mike's perspective on the role of analytics in the game today. How important is data when deciding who to play, who to trade, or even what to change? Are GMs and coaches still going with their gut? That's a great question because everybody's talking analytics. I think is it Corsi? Is that something that's out there? There's
so many different. There's so many different. With regards to the comparables and zone time, zone entry, shooting percent. It's unbelievable. It's a huge. It's there and it's here to stay. Some managers use it a lot more. Like Chaika. That was his big baby in Arizona. It was all about the numbers. For me, at the end of the day, if you find me an analytic that measures a player's character, then I'll buy into it as far as it being the deciding factor. But it's a huge factor. You put it in the blender with everything else, and it's a huge piece of everybody's discussions now. But at the end of the day, you've got to know whether the player fits into your locker room, what his attitude's like. And then you can take all of the analytics that are involved now and help you make a better decision. I think where they're used a lot are trying to decipher what you are going to offer players contractually, which I think is a huge piece of it. I find it more beneficial in a trade. I just, for me, it comes down to, again, like if you're going to take on a guy that has maybe a bit of a bad boy reputation, there's not going to be an analytic that's going to find out whether he's going to fit in with your group and whether you think your leadership group's strong enough to overcome that. So again, a lot of those things come into play. But as far as the question, it is awesome, but it's all about analytics. Every team has their own analytics department, but it's not I'd say in only maybe 5 or 10% of the places is it the driving force. For me, it's the other way around. It's just another piece of the puzzle, but it still comes down to visual scouting reports and what you know about the player's character.
Because Futs, that's where you came from, right? You're a gritty type of player, a lot of character. So you're gonna lean upon that and look at players, and you'll be able to analyze it. So this analytics came afterwards, I would assume. When you got into the league, I don't think analytics were as big. And now all of a sudden, Val's got, of course, is an advantaged statistic used in the game of ice hockey to measure shot attempts differential, not even strength. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Jimmy Corsi he was my goalie coach at St. Mike's, and he came up with the concept, and now it's named after him. So there's a lot of piece of him.
So did you have to learn this? Is it a learned tactic? Like you had to get
100%. But there's some people too. I like when a guy comes in and has a bit of a hockey background when he explains it, because there are people that have never played the game that come in and want to be the smartest guy in the room, and they want you to feel like you don't understand it. And I love when some of the hockey guys would just, like Rob Blake was awesome with this. He'd just say, okay, explain this so I understand it, or I'm going to get you out of the room. Because it's true. If a guy comes in and wants to just throw a million numbers on the board and that's not your strength, okay, you're just going to get more confused. But tell me how this is going to benefit our team. Tell me how it's give me a list of 3 players and their comparables, and tell me what are the chances if this is what, I can tell you this is what we're looking for in a player, whether we want a guy that's going to score in the paint, or whether we want a guy that's going to be a big passer or a top grade guy. you're going to get the analytics guy to put in the numbers and come up with some names that are going to be interesting for you. So, I mean, I'm not an anti-analytics guy, but I do laugh when I see something like your captain. Did you see Shifley the other day? Do his interview where he just said, "I hate analytics. I think it's a joke." And I look at him. I wish they never came around. I mean, that was pretty refreshing from one of the best players in the game. But unfortunately, Shif doesn't have to look at him. But management and coaches. I mean, Daryl Sutter used to want to know what time of possession, time of zone possession, because you get a book at the end of the game, after every game, that looks like the New Testament. And you get on the plane and you're like, oh, what is this? You know, where's my hockey news? But it just breaks down every player's numbers, their time on the ice, their zone entries, where they're shooting from. It's incredible stuff, but you need someone to explain it to you. And that creates, I guess it's great for the economy because it creates more jobs.
But can also, I was thinking about that, obviously, with all these big books after the game and that sort of stuff. Is the game not about feel too? Like you have to 100%.
And that's why I think a guy like I'm really interested to see, having worked with Daryl and him being a huge part in our 2 Stanley Cups and becoming a really close friend of his. I'm really interested because this Calgary Flames team is driving me crazy. Brad Treliving is one of my really good friends in the game. He goes out and gets them arguably one of the best goalies in the game. He gets them Tanev, and this core just doesn't seem to get it. So I've said this, and then, I mean, they come out the first period after they find out there's Daryl Sutter, and they look like the 72 Flyers. They're dropping the gloves. They're pound. And then it's like they take a big, deep breath and take their foot off the gas and go back to this team that doesn't compete on a regular basis. And I think it's going to be really interesting. These guys have no idea what they're in for.
No nonsense, right? He's no nonsense. But he's fair.
He holds you accountable. I mean, in the language, I mean, he probably going to have to understand that has to be just in the new age, going to have to be toned down a little bit. But he's not changing. I mean, he's going to find out. He's going to weed out the guys that take shortcuts. And so he's either going to get it out of them and they'll become the Calgary Flames that every kind of that Brad Treliving felt he was putting together, or he'll be able to just say to them, this group doesn't have it and this needs to be moved. And maybe you do have to blow it up. But I mean, I found it interesting because the 2 guys I think it's going to affect the most are Johnny Hockey. And I think he's actually been really good the first 2 games. I think, I mean, he said, I've played for tough coaches, but I guarantee he's never played for Daryl Sutter. And I think Tkachuk, because just the little things, I mean, this whole, and it's just me, but the whole stretching with your brother in the warm up. And I mean, it's if your team's on a losing streak and, you know, there's people's jobs on the line, if I'm upstairs, that's the last thing I want to see. Okay. And the one thing that Daryl will enforce, and I actually talked to Nesterov last night, who called me, said, "How do you think I'm playing?" And I said, "Well, on Hockey Night in Canada, they showed you stretching with Anisimov, lovey-dovey, talking about your days in Moscow. Daryl Sutter will tear you a new a-hole when he sees that." And I said, that team that you're playing that night is your enemy, right? That is the enemy. And from the moment the pregame skate starts, Daryl Sutter is in character that we are getting prepared to play an enemy. And it's not, I mean, you know, we always use war analogies, and we understand it isn't. I mean, there's real life, but he treats this is his job, and he wants that team to be the enemy. You get plenty of time now in the summer to hang out with your buddies, and everybody knows that
golf.
Yeah, exactly. And that's great. You guys that you've won championships with. But I mean, it really kind of hit home to me because I know Milan Lucic loves Darnell Nurse. And I think Luch was trying to send a message that there's no friends anymore. Like when he fought Nurse the other night, it's like, guys, this is what we're going to be expected to do. And if you have a different attitude than that, you're not going to be able to play for Daryl Sutter.
All right, listen, there's a couple more comments I want to go to. Bobby B, thank you for being such a big supporter here. The numbers don't lie. So I guess the analytics, but again, numbers do, you know, this plus minus.
So Bobby, can I ask you? So Bobby's he's obviously an analytics guy, right?
No, he's just a great fan. He loves the Toronto Maple Leafs. So he's
the numbers don't lie. And I mean, look, they can. They can.
Absolutely.
Every night they can. But and again, for me, they don't define a player's character. And you win championships with character. So after all the information's in, you put them in, you put it in as part of it, but you have to know the player. Like I always said, if there was a dead heat tie between character and hockey sense, I'd rather I'd rather err on the side of character if it's even.
Absolutely, 100%. So here's Rob Peloton. He's coming in and saying analytics can't manage the intangibles. Futa is right. You can't measure a player's compete level. I agree with that 100%. Analytics can be manipulated to support any position, skill. You know where I think analytics really come into question is when you're negotiating a contract. I think that's where it really comes down to it. They can say, okay, here, you did all this, but look at that.
Well, but it's amazing when you look at it. Like, I mean, you see now it's going to be really interesting, right? And I think that's why people really dislike Nylander gets a lot of heat in Toronto is the way that negotiation was handled, right? Because he sat out, he set the tone, they buckled. It's not that he's a bad hockey player, but he set the tone that now Marner and Matthews can do that too because he wasn't their best player, and he held the gun to their head and they caved. Now it'll be really interesting to see what happens in Vancouver now because you've got Elias Peterson and you got Quinn Hughes coming up. And I mean, they're not having years like they did last year. So you got Pat Brisson, who's one of the best in the industry. And he's going to be looking at the best of it. And you've got to be careful about how critical you are of their play too, because they clearly are your future. So you're right. The analytics are going to come into play, but it's amazing when an agent comes in who he's comparing his client to and who you're comparing him to. And somewhere you got to get in the middle. But you don't want to offend the player as well, especially when he's yours and he's not going anywhere. Like he's not going to go anywhere. It's not like it's a UFA that if you piss him off with an offer, he's gone, right? And Robbie Palante, by the way, he's awesome. I did a big podcast with Robbie, and for a guy, he looks like he should be in the WWE right now.
He does, doesn't he? Or an actor
with the fit. Well, either one. Actually, in fairness, they are actors. So he could.
No, don't say that.
It's fake. But no, you can't use the word. It's not fake. It's Rob would be very good at it. And I would like to see him put that text on a billboard because he has this thing in his podcast where he asks you to put if your life was a billboard. And my billboard, he asked JR the same question. It took us like a half an hour to finish our billboard off. So anyway, he's a good man.
We don't have all that time. Listen, JR decided the 4:00 bus comes at 4:30. We're going to bring him up in a second. I've changed from being in the dressing room. Now we're walking down Herning, Denmark, where you guys obviously tore that town up. We'll talk about some of those stories. So, ladies and gentlemen,
JR and I played in Gladsaxe. We never played in Herning together.
Gladsaxe.
JR played in every other team, and ask him where he was. If he says he was at the gym, I'm calling his bluff.
Hey, what time did the gym kick you out or what?
Sorry, fellas. Say that dentist is a lot longer than I thought. So
I'm not going to believe that story, but if it was sunny outside, I could ask what he shot.
Yeah, well, there's inside golf simulator. You're more than welcome to come. We can play scramble on that.
And you know that's and there's dentists there as well.
We put it all together. So, how you doing, fellas? Great to see you again.
Doing great. Yeah, thanks for showing up. Thank you. Just like in Great for having showed up.
My
5 minutes. Oh, don't be silly. Hey, listen, it's been great to catch up with Foots. The TV personality that he is now, and really got into some things. And I think
he's a hockey guy.
Thanks.
He's a hockey guy. He's doing a great job on TV. I try not to text him while he is there working, but let's not make a mistake here. He is a hockey guy, and he's one of the best. One of the best.
You're one of the few guys
in the world.
That's a rule, JR. Thank you for not texting me while I'm on, because all our other buddies seem to think it's fun.
Well, I'm sure they do. But no, hey, if Fuchs is his record speaks for itself, man. I mean, Calder Cups, Stanley Cups. He's a key figure in why that LA team was as good as they were for so long. So I miss seeing him up there in the NHL, and I have no doubt that he'll be back there very soon one day, I hope. So.
Gouche,
and I love seeing him on the TV. But
can I give you a Cole's notes? Because you asked beforehand about how far we go back.
Yes, I want to hear the Cole's notes. Before you do the Cole's notes, Robbie's just piping in saying, I had to buy a highway to hang the billboards for you two. All right, Cole's notes. Here we go.
Grade 9. Took me to my first party and then it threw me in the door at night. I don't remember anything about it. But he was my favorite hockey player outside of the National Hockey League for my entire existence. He was a captain of the undefeated team at Henry Carr, went on to UNH, and then I was playing at York. I had kind of screwed up a couple scholarship opportunities and went to York. It actually ended up being the best thing for me. But JR met me at the end of my driveway, and I knew he was playing in Europe, and he said, "You're not done. Don't think you're done." And he brought me to Europe with him, and it changed my entire life. We ended up playing in a place called Gladsaxe. He became my coach, which is not fun when you have to play for JR, because as people know, he's the most competitive human being in the world. But it was still, we became best of friends, and he kind of breathed life into my hockey career, because I was getting ready to start teaching and stuff like that. And it ended up snowballing into a fun time and some competitive days in Europe. But when I came back, it just instilled a passion for coaching. And I was fortunate enough to get involved with St. Mike's in the OHL team. And then I moved into management because coaching was not my forte, and evaluating players was. And when I got to Los Angeles, JR and I remained close. And at one point I knew his passion. So I had a chance to, we needed to hire a skating coach. And anybody that's ever seen JR skate, it's effortless and he can fly in spite of the texture of his legs. He's that good. And we hired him as a skating coach. He came down, and to be a teammate of his again at the National Hockey League level was kind of like being able to pay it forward. But my most proud moment was to be able to come back to, I flew back and met him in, his team was practicing in Georgetown, I believe. And I came to practice against the boards, and I got to present him his Stanley Cup ring in front of his team. And it
wasn't good, because he can't have the coach crying in front of his players. But
it was pretty cool. It was one of those pay it forward experiences, but it wasn't like you're not paying it forward, because anything that I've ever been involved with him, he's going to make you look good, right? So it's not, some guys want favors in the game, other guys earn opportunities, right? And anybody that's ever been around him and the programs he's run, like I almost had to kick him out of the under-17 program because I couldn't get him to play as backup goalie, because all he wanted to do was win. I know you don't like the other guy, but we got to evaluate him, and he paid his money.
My guy was pitching a shutout. You don't take a goalie out when he's having a shutout.
Hey, listen, Foots, we're going to let you to James, I'm going to want you to talk about Foots in a sec, but I do want to butt in here and say this. You are dead on about JR. Foots, I had the opportunity. We played in some crazy men's league hockey, and then got a chance to play against him. The one game that I played against him, I had to chase him around the ice. He is an incredible hockey talent. He was in Grey Frath. I was in Timmendorf. It was like 8-7. He had 4, I had 3, and afterwards we just sat there. We didn't like each other on the ice, Foots, so Daryl Sutter wouldn't get upset. But after the game, I'm so proud of him, because I had something to do with bringing him over. And I'll tell you what, JR, you are an incredible hockey player, hockey mind yourself. So.
Like JR, I know he plays hard and he's dirty, but he's never really been a fighter. So I tell you, I'm in my first game in Denmark. We're playing. We take a boat to a game, and I hit a guy. It was like Wendell Clark behind the net on Bruce Bell, and they just stopped the game. The guy's just lying there, and they said, "You have to leave. You can't hit like." So JR's laughing about it, but it's funny. I'm in the shower by myself, going, "That was probably. I don't think I'm brought here to do that." And then we get back home, and I hadn't been scoring, so we're in this little pub playing pool, and at the top of the stairs, there's this guy who hardly speaks English, but he's giving it to me. But he's actually telling me that he likes me. I'm going to be he likes my physical style, and the scoring's going to come. And JR sees him talking to me and thinks he's telling me how bad I'm playing.
Oh, no.
So he took the old watch off. The next thing you know, the guy got knocked down the stairs. JR just one-punched him down the stairs. And he's like, "Yeah, these guys, they got to lay off you." And I said, he was actually telling me he liked me.
Okay, JR.
We bought him a tray of beers afterwards.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, good.
We sat with him, and
he iced his eye with him.
we apologize for that, but
so obviously both of you guys have been at the top level. So JR, tell us a little bit about Foots, because he doesn't like all his accolades. Hey, Stanley Cup twice. It's unbelievable what you've done. Foots, obviously I played against you in Bremerhaven, and you're one of those gritty guys, as I mentioned. And so I'd love to hear your report, your analytics JR on Foots?
Well, yeah, I mean, he plays hard. There's no question, but he's fast. He can fire a puck. But we go way back. I mean, he's been the leader of every team he's played for. He was the leader of a national championship team at York University. He was captain of his junior team. So when I found out that he was going to continue, schooling to be a teacher, which would be wonderful for him and whatnot, but I wanted him to play for my team because I know what he can do on the ice. And it's true. I mean, he's one of those guys that would skate and he'd pick a point 3 feet past you. So most of the guys are going to come in and rub you out or take your angle away and hit you. Fuchs was looking 3 feet beyond you, and he would hit you so hard your bones would rattle. So when he came in and was playing in Copenhagen with me and for me, there were sometimes he get penalties and he'd look dumbfounded on the ice or in the penalty box. What was that for? I said, well, it's hitting too hard. You get a penalty for hitting too hard. That's what it is over here. So, but he's fast. He can shoot a puck hard, but his character is first and foremost is what I look at when you're bringing a player in to join a team, because he's one of those guys that people gravitate towards, on the ice, off the ice, and he's a winner. So when you're putting a team together, you want winners around you. So it was an easy choice. Hey, he was in grade 9. I wasn't in grade 9 going to party. I wasn't driving in grade 9, by the way. Maybe I was. I didn't drive. Yeah, he was in grade 9. So and he wanted to come with me to the party, so that's why I took him to the party. I didn't drag him to the party. I did. I helped him in his front door. I should have gone in and said hi to his mom and dad, but I thought it'd be best if I took off there. But Fuchs played every game as hard as he possibly could. He went to Herning. I see the town behind you, because that was the top team, and they were willing to pay him more money than what we had in Copenhagen. Got to play against them, but we've been friends, since high school, and I couldn't be more proud of a person that I call my friend, because of all what he's done in hockey and continues to do in hockey. But first and foremost, he's just a great person. That's what it is for me. So yeah, we can sit here for hours and talk about some things we did on the ice that maybe crossed the boundaries. But
I don't have the disclaimer right now, so just hang on.
Yeah, but that was my game. I was smaller, and I knew I could skate away from some guys. Like Rob Palante is a perfect example. He wanted to kill me every time that we played any games against each other, and but I knew that if I got in there and did something to him and it hurt, I probably could get away from him fast enough. So, exactly. But yeah, so Fuchs is just again, it's all character. But he can fly, he can shoot, he can hit like a truck. But he brings the team together, and that's why I wanted him on my team. So
I want to ask both this question, because you guys are high level management and coaches, and you played at very high levels. We hear this term, he's good in the dressing room. So I know that Rob Palante is saying, I know for a fact, JR, when you play golf, you're more committed. That's how I met my wife, actually, because of you, now that I think of it.
Well, thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Best thing that happened to me. JR drove away. Like you're competitive in everything, and I know JR, you know that of Mike too. So I want to get to a question, because I've been asked this many times. What's a player that's great in the dressing room? What does that mean exactly? Like, what happens if they're terrible on the ice? Is it really important to have a guy that's great in the dressing room?
No, because then you just have a pom-pom guy, a guy shaking his pom-poms upstairs. If he's just good in the room, and he can't play, then he's a pom-pom guy, and vice versa. I mean, if a guy's not great in the room, but has all kinds of skill, he's not gonna be part of a winning team. You gotta mix the two of them together. You've got to have the skill set. You've got to be able to play the game, and you've got to be a team first guy. And when I say team first, that means, everything that you do is for the team, for the better of the team, and understand that if the team has success, each individual is going to have more success. But it's not putting yourself above that team, but it's also being able to grab a hold of a guy that may be stepping outside the boundaries and pulling them back in. Maybe not in front of everybody, but on your own, being able to convince this guy that, hey, get back on the train here because you're going sideways and it doesn't look good for you or for us. So I think that's what a character guy is.
I agree 100%, JR. You can't. It used to be, it's like one of those whatever Hallmark cards. Yeah, he's great in the room, but you get to the higher level, then you stay in the room.
Yeah.
Whatever, stay in the room. Now, if you're like talking Sunday night hockey, we had a guy named Joey Vendetta. He was great in the room.
Oh, Joey, yeah.
He was great in the room, and he also got us in every bar in Toronto. He was working for Q107, so that's the kind of guy you can deal with being great in the room, and not so great on the. But at the higher level, you got nobody that's just great in the room. It might be an intangible they bring that adds to their package, but it's so. I mean, if you're not, it's just such a. It's just a term. He's great in the room. Daryl Sutter.
First time I met Joey Vendetta was at Brian Green Skates on Wednesdays. I didn't know who he was, and he's decked out in Toronto Maple Leaf gear. I'm thinking, holy, did he
How do you think you got that, Gouche? How do you think you got that?
I know. Hey, listen, he got me in a couple bars.
You got all the Leafs.
Got in the bar too. He was great in the Leaf room too. You're right.
I want to ask you both. There's a couple of questions that are here that people want to hear this from two guys that know their stuff. So first, obviously, JR, you are the general manager, coach of the Mississauga Steelheads. Obviously, Futs, you'll be back in the NHL really soon. You guys have been in the war rooms, and the question comes: what is it like in the war rooms before the draft is going on or trade deadline? Tell us about what that feeling's like. Is there an adrenaline rush? You guys, obviously, both of you have been involved with making decisions. Hey, trade him, get him. Tell us about that. Futs, you start first, and then JR, you can talk to us maybe on the junior aspect of it.
Much different from obviously the junior to the NHL. I mean, the junior, there's so many rounds. There's a lot more scouts from different areas. I mean, the NHL draft, you're ready. Your list is finalized. There's nothing that's going to change your order. You've got a whole bunch of different trade scenarios, whether you're moving up or moving down in the draft. So, I mean, it's like the adrenaline is incredible. I mean, the pride too, when you win and you're in the last table and you get to walk up on stage, and when your team sucks, it's the shortest walk. My dad used to say, God, you got great seats. And I'm like, Dad, I don't want to have good seats. You want to be at the back. That's where the Stanley Cup champion is. But I mean, the preparation that goes into it is incredible. And the trade deadline as well. I mean, with Dean Lombardi, he was really good at identifying, what we needed. And then we just watched video as a staff and bring in the analytics. And it was like the 1 year we really felt we needed another stick, and we must have watched 100 tapes of Marian Gaborik. And there's an example. We knew that there were some questions about Marian's character and his ability to pay the price, but we knew we had such a strong dressing room that Marian Gaborik came in, all he had to do was score. He didn't have to lead, and the guys were going to hold him accountable. And he ended up scoring, I think, 17 goals in the playoffs that year, and we won the Stanley Cup. Now, the problem was we should never have signed him. We should have just patted him on the back and let him go his way. But we showed him the money, and that led to some losing some pretty good players at the same time. But yeah, it's the preparation that goes into it. But there's not a lot of last minute. Your work's done. It's just finishing it off and adjusting. Like, you kind of know who's available for trade. You've got to make decisions on the go, but there's no real winging it on the draft day. It's if you've done your work, it's just that day is just, but it's just icing on the cake. That's probably the easiest day. It's all the work that goes into it leading up to it. It's really the battle and the struggle.
Yeah, are you done, Futs?
We
lost Gouche.
No, I'm always here. I'm listening. I'm learning because I want to become you two guys someday when I grow up.
Yeah. Okay. So, hey, listen, I get to go to the NHL drafts and I get to watch Feuds on the floor, and I can tell you, so we're pretty close friends, and the day of the draft, I may wave at Feuds, and Feuds may wave at me, but there's no talking. He's in game mode, and I love watching it. It's a pretty cool event. If you've never been to an NHL draft, you should try to check one out. But if you watch those guys on the floor, if you get to know any of them, you watch how they go, and those 2 days, Feuds is in game mode, and don't bug him. Don't try to, hey buddy. On those 2 days, it's game mode for him. But
you know what, Jared? The funny thing, Jared, when you think about it, how cool is it to get like you love the sport of hockey more than anybody. Like, I mean, I love it. I mean, we love the game so much to be able to for it to be your living is just a dream. Like, I mean, people can call it work. And it's work because it's a lot of travel and it's time consuming, but it's never really felt like work because I love it so much. It's a dream.
I couldn't agree. 100%. Well, you know how I am. And I go to bed at night thinking about the game, and I wake up in the morning thinking about the game, and I love it. And there's so many great people in the game of hockey. Unfortunately, too many times we only hear the bad stuff because that's what the media kind of picks up on. But there are so many great people in the game. I get to deal with the junior guys every day, which is a lot of fun for me. And I've got kids from 15 to 20 every day, 23 of them. So I hear people complain about teenagers all the time. And do they get themselves into trouble every now and then? Yeah, they do. But you know what? We can help them through it and get them to learn from their mistakes and whatnot. So, but for our draft, again, there's so much work that goes into it. We have scouts all over Ontario and the U.S., and we'll bring them in periodically throughout the year and have scouts meetings, which obviously as the GM I have to kind of oversee, and we want arguments in the draft room or in the meeting rooms, because we want people to be passionate about the players that the Steelheads are going to draft. So we'll meet periodically throughout the year, and then a couple of weeks before the draft, we'll have a big meeting, and then 3 days before the draft, we'll have another one, and then obviously the day before. So it's funny because they're done remotely, the OHL draft. So we do them from our war room at the rink in Mississauga, and I'll stay at a hotel in Mississauga that's close to the rink. But what I've learned from Feuds is, you can never be over prepared. At the same time, he never told me that when you're doing that, when you're going through that process, you forget about sleep. So I book a hotel room every time that there's the draft, and I'll go there the night before the draft. I usually check in around 12 or 1 o'clock at night, but I'm back at the rink by 5:30, 5 in the morning. I'll shower and shave at the rink. So, and by the whole time you're at the hotel, you're staring at the roof and thinking, okay, do we have these guys in the right order? Because you don't always know who's picking in front of you or who's going to get picked in front of you, but a lot of times you do. Yeah. So a lot of times, whether you're picking 7th or 20th, you kind of know the 2 or 3 players that are going to fall to you, and you want to make sure you've done all your homework with the interviews and checking out the person's character and whatnot and the families. So there's a ton of work that goes into it, and on draft day, you're just going on adrenaline. The breakfast comes in, the lunch comes in, sometimes the dinner comes in later on, and it is all on. So it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of rounds in our draft, whereas Feuds is, that first round takes up the 1 day, and then rounds 2 to 7 take up the second day in the NHL. But for us, it's all in 1 day. So it's adrenaline. It's a lot of adrenaline going through us, and I love it.
What's incredible, Jared, is I remember my first OHL draft. And it's just how far things have come. At that time, even the OHL, like I remember, was that Maple Leaf card, and you sat at your table, and it was like one guy had a computer, right, and everybody had their notes. Everything was on paper, and it's just amazing now how there's things in place that don't allow you to make a mistake. But I remember watching Brian Kilray, and Ottawa had just won they just won the Memorial Cup, and they're sitting there, and they kept drafting guys that had been drafted. And then I just look over at Brian Kilray, and he'd be throwing his pencil out, and you lost your pick. Like in the OHL, if you they already taken. But they didn't have. They had all these guys that were like. Killer had his pack of wolves, right? That he just his drinking buddies. So they were like their pen and pencils, like, oh, Dave Smith, scratch that one out. And then they tell stories, and they'd forget to scratch a name off. And they drafted 3 guys that had already been taken. And that's funny. I mean, now when you take it in the NHL, when you plug in, obviously that was the thing, the amount of assets and the amount of stuff you have access to. But I mean, you plug a name in, it says he's not there. Right.
Well,
so
thank God there's a whiteboard now that it comes right off the computer because it didn't.
But it's even that. I mean, you think about the scouts meetings, and like I'd have guys in my own sound scouts meetings, and they just say, "You can't play, and I'm like, and that's right up there with he's good in the room. Like, you don't. If you're being paid to do your job, you better have something more than can't play.
Can't play. Yeah, that's.
We had it's under Dean Lombardi. We actually had a guy's full-time job was like a stenographer. So there's none of this, because what scouts like to do is after a guy turns out, they say, "Oh, I had him high." I had him high. Yeah. So now, stenographer, you're accountable for every comment. So you can't go back and say, "Well, we missed him, but I liked him," because everybody knows exactly where you had everybody. And it's we basically have like a courtroom stenographer that takes down all the small talk, so you can't go back and throw out that infamous comment. Like, I mean, we took Wayne Simmons in the end of the second round. I knew nobody had Wayne Simmons even in the draft because I was his GM in Owen Sound. And as soon as, when I said his name out loud, my phone blew up. Like Steve Spott called me and said, "I hope you didn't give up your house in Owen Sound." Like, it was unbelievable. Pete DeBoer called me and said, "Great pick." But when Wayne Simmons started to become what Wayne Simmons became because of how hard he worked, everybody was like, "Well, we had him at the top of the third. We had him at the top." And that's just a natural thing for scouts to do. So I do like when guys get held accountable that way, because they're absolutely some pretty interesting stories.
And that's what's really cool about. Sorry, Jay.
Yeah, now they do, because everything's recorded, right? Shoots. I mean, all my printouts for all my reports on every game that the player or scouts are seeing, and one of the worst things to ever say to me when I ask a question is, "I don't know," or if
exactly. What have you done? How long have you had to know?
Yeah, or if you've done something on the ice and I'm trying to come over and help you in some way in practice. A player in Mississauga, they don't say, "I know." No, you don't know, because if you knew, you wouldn't have just done what you just did. So don't say, "I don't know," as a scout, and as a player, don't say, "I know."
What mine is, JR, is when I ask a scout a question and he asks me a bunch of questions back. Like if I say, "Tell me about the player," he gives you one of those. "Well, what are you looking for? Like, if you're looking," and I'm like, "Oh,
I don't know. I'm looking for a 6th-round pick."
Oh,
I'm looking for the best player. I'm looking for the best player right now.
I have to. There's a comment up there that I have to comment on, Gouche.
Yeah, of course. I was going to come there in a second.
It does talk about our relationship. Okay. I was at there's a guy called Mash, right? Who we probably all know Mash, right? So
Masher. Yeah, he's still around.
Right? And it's frightening that he's still around. He's even better looking now. He said, he comes up to me at the rink and he says, "Futes, I've been asked to get hockey players for a movie." So they put me in charge of recruiting all these players for a movie. And so I call James and I call all these guys to come and skate at this, and it's free ice. We don't believe there's actually going to be a movie. So it's free ice. And all of a sudden, who shows up? All of a sudden, there's guys watching us in the crowd, and all of a sudden, this Rob Lowe shows up wearing a cage, and Patrick Swayze wearing a cage, and they have to do these interviews to see who's going to be. It's going to be serious. Who's going to be what? So here's Futes that brought all the guys in. I can't grow a beard. I end up getting thrown in the training camp scene. I get about 30 seconds, and who ends up being the captain of the bad boys?
There he is.
You're looking at the guy that beats the Tara. I think you fight. Eugene James is the captain of the. If you go back and watch, he's the captain of the.
Yeah.
What were your team called?
Thunder Bay Bombers.
Thunder Bay Bombers. He's
The Bombers.
and George.
It
was George that came in, and I mean, JR. Here we are. I'm eating Swiss Chalet. He's dating Cindy Gibb. It's unbelievable, and it's true.
Yeah, that was a fun summer.
And I got the nice time. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
Listen, JR, don't comment on Youngblood, because Kevin Shea and I are doing the best movies, and that's one of them coming up. So we're going to be getting you on to talk about your role on it in a couple of weeks. So leave it there. What's really cool, guys, is to listen to you talk. And for people that maybe have never been in the war rooms and listening to you guys talk about it, everybody just watches television and it all happens, right? And you guys are all happy and you're putting hats on and shaking hands and that. So thank you for sharing that with us. I know we've had a lot of time with you. I know that JR, you were a little bit late, so you're going to be punished to come back on the Youngblood. So my last point to you, this was a great, and it's actually coming from Dennis Maruk. I want to hear, this is the last part that I want to ask you before you guys go off and have your dinners. This is a good one. Dennis Maruk says, you two should go and take over Buffalo Sabres. They need your help. So we have this battle of trying to figure out what the heck is going on in Buffalo. So if you guys, Futa, I know that you're vying for general manager jobs, so you may have to be delicate, but tell us what the heck. That is a good hockey team, and it's a train wreck. And Eichel, it's crazy. Love to hear your guys. First, you can go, James.
Well, I mean, you're putting Futs on the spot here pretty badly.
Okay, Futs, stay out of it then. Stay out of it. Let's hear JR.
No problem saying what I think.
Yeah, as it's hard as a coach. You don't want to. You never want to critique somebody else's job. So, but
no, of course
it comes down to the players. The players are giving up too much. They're not playing in sync with each other. When I watch Buffalo, the players in the NHL can play. You talk about, are they playing the right way? Well, what is the right way? Well, the right way is you go on the ice. Everybody's job when they go on the ice is to score and not get scored upon. And right now, there's not enough guys in Buffalo that understand giving up chances and giving up the puck through the neutral zone, giving up your blue line on possession entries is not the way to win hockey games. They're one and done in the offensive zone. They've got real good power play numbers, but if you have to be up on a team 5-on-4 or 5-on-3 to beat them,
to win,
you're not going to be a playoff team. So I think it's a commitment to winning and understanding how bad it tastes to lose. If you are on a streak like they are right now, I think it's 7 or 8 in a row. Do you not think some of the character players in that room would say, "Hey, fellas, this is on us. This is on us. We're giving up too much. They're not scoring because they don't have the puck, and they don't have the puck because they don't go get it. They don't shut guys off before the blue line. They don't force dump ins. They give up entries all the time." It's a buy-in. It really is a buy-in. And at every level, you've got to teach some players what that buy-in means. And, they can sit Skinner for not scoring, but there's a whole bunch of other guys there that are giving up too much when they play hockey. If you play ball hockey, because I'm not allowed to play ball hockey on the street anymore with my son. Because he said, "Dad, all the kids want you to play ball." So I played. My team won 10-9, 10-8, and I scored 9. And he said, "You're not allowed to play anymore." I said, "Why?"
And he speared one of the kids too.
Yeah.
And jerseyed him at the same time.
I butt-ended him. He wasn't ready for it. But you want the ball. You want the puck. How badly do you want the puck? If it means enough, Gouche, you'll make it happen. And right now, it's not meaning enough to the players.
And Ralph Kruger has not lost how to be a good coach. Like, I know Ralph personally. I played against him in Germany. He was on my line in June. This guy's a competitor. He's like you guys. He analyzes the game. He understands what it takes to build a winner. And I'm just confused there. It's Boots.
Well, I interviewed there many moons ago with with Pat LaFontaine, and I ended up Dean Lombardi just pulled me out of the interview process, or I probably would have become a general manager way before I was ready. But it was an interesting process. But there's usually when you go into a GM interview, there's a team that's struggling to define a culture. What are we? Right? Like, what are we? And it was funny because when I interviewed in Pittsburgh, that's the only place I've ever gone into an interview process that they have a culture. They might need, they're the Pittsburgh Penguins, right? And the guys are still there. So they might need their culture tweaked a bit, but they have a culture. You know what the Pittsburgh Penguins are all about. I don't know what the Buffalo Sabres are all about. And it's a great hockey town. The fans love it. The Pagulas it's almost like they've made all the right decisions with the football team and all the wrong decisions with the hockey team. And when you're trying to define a culture, you bring in people that have won and built a culture. And I'm not, I mean, just this thing. They obviously brought in Jason Botterill from Pittsburgh. He made some interesting, the Skinner contract. There's just a lot of bad contracts, which is another situation. But they change him, and instead of doing their due diligence and bringing in someone that's established a winning culture, Kevin Adams was a great player and he's a great person. He has zero experience as a general manager in the National Hockey League, and they just handed him the keys to the car. Now, whether it was a financial reason, and it's no knock on. I've spoken to Kevin on the phone about, do you need any help? Do you want any assistance? And he, nope, we're all good. Which is, that's fine. But it's not, if you're not willing to surround yourself with people that have done it to help you. That's the thing with me that I've learned is I've never brought in disciples of Mike Futa. I brought in people that I know are going to make me better. People that have done things that I haven't done, right? That I'm going to learn from, and they're going to make our organizations better. That was always my thing in Owen Sound, was I had to hire a guy that had been in the NHL as my coach, because I don't want to sit across from players and tell them what I think it was like to be in the National Hockey League. I needed somebody that could tell them exactly what it was like, right? So, and now that I've been in the National Hockey League, I still you'll never catch me talking about my playing career, but I certainly have enough experience in management to be able to tell people what it's like. I've had Dean Lombardi, the boss I've had, what it's like to start from scratch, build a culture, succeed, and win. And for Buffalo, it's like you've got Jack Eichel, one of the best players in the world. He obviously was pretty immature when they got him. But the first thing the general manager, when they drafted him, said was, "I lost sleep last night because we're not getting McDavid." It's like there's certain things that you say that establish a person, and now you're letting the inmates run the asylum. And I'd like to know who. I don't see, like, the Leafs. The Leafs were a little worried about their room getting away on them, so they went out and got Joe Thornton, Wayne Simmons, guys that haven't won, that they're not there to win a playoff round. They're there to win a Stanley Cup, and they've been through it all. Yeah. And they're not going to allow guys to take shortcuts because they came here to win a cup. Now, whether they do it or not, but those are the kind of guys in that dressing room. Who's in the Buffalo dressing room?
Well, let me ask you this question. That's a very good, and you both can answer this, and we'll end it because I know you guys are busy. Answer me this question. There are 7 losses in a row. They go up against the Flyers tomorrow. They've got the Pens for a couple, and then they got the Caps. So they got tough games coming up. How can not somebody step up? How can not step up? They could be 10 games in a row lost, and they're out of it. How do they make change, guys? If you were in that position, how do they make change?
Real quickly, what I think's happening is they're being told they can't spend any money, right? So it's great to say that Ralph, and I love Ralph too, but at some point there has to be a change. You have to shake the trees, but you've also got to know who you're going to replace him with. And if you're going to the Pagulas and saying, okay, first of all, Kevin Adams, I guarantee you, has never gone through the process of trying to hire a coach mid-season. So you're probably terrified about it getting out if you're trying to talk to other candidates, which is a real tough thing to do at the National Hockey League level, but there's a way to do it. And I think, and then you've got to go to an ownership group that's got a complete freeze on hiring and say, if we get the right guy, he's not coming for chicken wings.
Well, they are good there.
They're awesome. But I'm telling you, if you're going to get the right guy, he's going to be a 7-figure guy. And they're probably not they're probably saying get through this until there's fans in the stands because we're not paying a guy.
Good point. Yeah,
it's a tough time right now. It's a tough time right now. It's COVID, and NHL teams are losing money, and it's tough watching that team play on a nightly basis. And you just went over the schedule. They've got some hard games to play here. I mean, they're not going to get out of it unless the players buy in and hate losing. They if they're not embarrassed now, they should be. And Ralph Kruger, he's coaching the NHL. He's done a lot of great things. He's a great hockey mind. Yeah. So let's stop pointing our finger just at Ralph Kruger.
No, I'm not at all.
As Futa says, they may not want to spend. There might be a spending freeze there, and if there is, then maybe the coach isn't going anywhere.
There's so many flaws in that roster that to think, to look at that league, you look at, and last year there was a plethora of elite goaltenders available.
Yeah, well, that's okay. The coach of the year every year.
That's the most important position, and this is no knock on because I actually thought it was a good. I didn't like the money at all, but I do like the player. But your goal, how are you going to win without goaltending?
You don't, and you know it as well as anybody. The coach of the year, look to see who's playing in the net for him right now. I mean, and Pete DeBoer is a great coach. Him and Spotter have done a terrific job everywhere they've gone.
Yeah.
And this year they're lights out. But who's lights out right now for them? Who's their best player? Maybe Fleury. Alex Tuck's having a great year. Nick Hagg's having a great year on the back end. Martinez, they brought Martinez in from Stanley Cup. Hey, go back to the Leafs for a second, Futa. You talked about Jumbo, you talked about Simmons, but they brought in Jake Muzzin. Jake Muzzin is a character guy who's won. Who was thrown on the heat. He was thrown on a pile of heat, and Mike Futa pulled him off that heat and brought him into into LA. And now Toronto brings him in, and he's not going to wow anybody. He's not going to bring anybody out of the seats. But everybody in the dressing room, the Leafs dressing room, loves him.
Zach Bogosian won a Stanley Cup last year. He can tell them what it's like. Yeah. He couldn't play for the Buffalo Sabres. He could not make the Buffalo Sabres.
He walked away.
I'm not saying Zach's limited. I mean, you know what? He's a sixth defenseman. He's
5'6".
He fulfills a role. He's a character guy. He was a second or third pick overall.
Big body. He makes the forwards pay when they come into the D zone.
Yeah. And I mean, there's some
he walked away from them.
Championship pedigree in the Buffalo Sabres locker room. Where does Jack Eichel turn to find out what's it like? What do we got to do? What do we have to do?
Yeah.
Nothing. Gilbert Pro.
Hey, that's still black and white TV. Hey, guys, listen, I know I've taken a lot of your time. JR, I'm getting you back. Mikey, love you. What you're doing on TV. I know you're going to be back in the National Hockey League.
Hey,
and we can't thank you enough for coming and giving us.
I'm talking about TV.
Why?
Yeah, TV stuff.
Stop talking about what he does on TV.
He looks great on TV. I wish I could be beside him on TV. That's all. I think he's going to throw in my name. Hey, you got to get that Gouche guy.
Rob Palant, listen, if I get a job, Gouche, I will bring you in for TV.
Yes.
JR, you're coming in for hockey. You're coming in for TV because you got all these props and stuff in the background. You got
it's unbelievable. Hey, look at the city I got.
A big Jets dress room. I mean, I got a bull on. I got a car trying to jump on my screen. I got animals on the wall. Look at this. I got all the toys. Hey, Jared, Rob Palante, our good friend. He's now got. I think he works for Hallmark part time. If you want success as bad as you want to breathe, only then you will succeed.
That's unbelievable. He's unbelievable. Mental health. Love it. Okay, guys. Hey, we love you lots. I can't wait to have you back on, JR, and we talk about young blood and Foots. No TV.
JR, what time are we going to meet at the dentist/driving range tomorrow?
No, that's on our next talk. That's on our next call.
Hey, my apologies. My kid's 14 years old. He's got braces. What do you get braces for if you want to be a hockey player?
Good luck with the Jets. Good luck with your Jets.
Our executive producer saying thank you, Val. He thinks you guys are a riot.
You said we're
See you later, boys.
You see, we're supposed to be in a dressing room. If we were in a dressing room, whoa.
Well, that's why we couldn't. I had to get rid of the dressing room because you know what? These guys said two beauties. See you, kids.
See you guys. All the best.
Bye. Sorry, Val. How good were those two guys? My goodness. Sorry about the mix-up there. It was obviously I was battling to get JR on. He's sitting in a dentist chair, all that sort of stuff. Well, I know it went a little long, but what a perspective. Thanks for throwing some of the questions up. But understanding, like you watch it, you see the draft. Paul and I have had this conversation. What actually goes on at the draft? I've been in the draft. I think it was in LA. I was watching it, thinking, what are those guys doing? But it's the 2 months prior to it all.
Yeah, I guess a lot of the prep work, as they both said, goes into it. But it was just more of the trade deadline. You know what I mean? Just a little hustle and bustle. Like, what can we offer for this player? Like the must like Futs was saying that it's an adrenaline rush because you're trying to pick what works best for your team and stuff like that. So I thought it was kind of interesting.
You don't want to be the guy that makes the mistake too, right? You don't want to. Okay, and I like that, the accountability. In the old days, it was just a piece of paper, right, written down. Now you can't say, "Oh I picked him," right? And then they come back and show you.
It's like that thing where the Blue Jays won the World Series. The stadium only sits 55,000, and apparently 2.3 million people were at that game.
Yeah, exactly. Of course. All right, buddy. Sorry we went so long. I know that we'll take Monday off. I've got our little games coming. I have not had. I've had so many compliments on what we did with trade him, sign him, and release him. People are saying, Gouche, at least write him down properly. I was all over the map, but fantastic. We're looking forward to tomorrow. I've got Jacqueline Hawkins. She's part of the Hockey News. She's got her own, obviously, podcast, but really important. She runs a thing called The Women's Hockey Life. Today was International Women's Day. Please give our best to your beautiful bride. I'm the one that's saying, guys, let's stop having days. It's a lifestyle. We're all equal in this. We're all doing it together. And so I'm really excited about having her on tomorrow and talking about where is the women's game. Like, there are issues, but there are some positive signs. Obviously, I think they just announced the NWHL will be coming back. They'll be playing March 26, 28. I didn't have the details, but that's certainly good news. They're going to come back from those playoffs. And then the PWHL, what's going on with that, with the Women's Players Association. So it's really cool that things are starting to move forward for the women's game, and we're excited about that. What do you got on me? Anything exciting that I've missed off on today?
You know what? I just want to give a big shout out to, since we touched on the Buffalo Sabres and how they're pretty dreadful, I think they're going to be immortalized in this year's Play of the Year by Matt Barzal's breakaway goal against Buffalo this past weekend. It was a beauty. Between the legs, top corner on the far side. So
that was crazy. Yeah. All right. We're looking forward. Yeah. Do you know when Daryl Sutter's showing up in Calgary? I didn't see that news. Is he?
It should look great soon because he's not out of Canada, so he doesn't have to isolate.
No, I think he had 2 or 3 days or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, the team is currently I think here on the East Coast, if I'm not mistaken. They played. Sorry, no, they're in the West. They're at home. Yeah, they played Ottawa last night and they lost. Yeah, so I get confused because me growing up, the white jerseys were the home team and the dark jerseys were the road team. So when they switched it about 10 years ago, it's like.
And do not forget, we're going to be having one of those great shows. We're just getting it planned right now. We're going to have a show on those beautiful jerseys. And where did they come up with the gray? Why is it gray? God, aren't we living in enough gray right now? Let's pick it up. All right, Val, thank you, buddy. Hey, listen, don't forget, 4 o'clock tomorrow. Jacqueline Hawkins is right here. Make sure you follow us. And, of course, right after that, it is the Rosen Report with Paul Rosen. We're really looking forward to him and his guests over the next week. We've got some great guests coming on. So please make sure you check it out. You've been watching Gouche Live. In Australia, Guernsey. Did you know a Guernsey is a jersey or a sweater? All right, guys, thank you. You've been watching Gouche Live featuring the Big Val. I loved having JR and, of course, our buddy Futs. He will be back in the National Hockey League soon. And it's brought to you by the good people at the Hockey News and Sports Illustrated. All right, guys. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
You've been listening to Gouche Live with your host, Kerry Goulet, better known as the Gouche, brought to you by the Hockey News and Sports Illustrated.